Have you ever read a book and thought to yourself, whatever lady, there's a whole lot of lofty ideas that you have in your hocus pocus thoughts on how to solo game in this case, but I think I've got it handled. But then you reread that same book months later, maybe years, and then it blows your damn mind. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today in the Sacred Art of Gaming. Welcome back to the channel. I am Sacred. This is the Sacred Art of Gaming, and I would like to discuss the Solo Game Master's Guide by Geek Gamers. Maybe you've heard of her. She might be pretty well known around these parts, but yeah, if you enjoy solo gaming, tabletop role-playing, and everything that inspires it, as you're watching this video, maybe consider liking and or subscribing. Now let's get into my experiences with this wonderful book. Now the first time I read this book, I must admit, I read it, I didn't read it front to back. I didn't read it back to front. I didn't read it in any order. I really just kind of referenced a lot of things. And then I really kind of got to the tables and I was like, give me that, that's what I really want. And then I forgot that I pulled those tables. This second time that I read it from page 1 to the very last page. And I went through every single table in that order. I went through every single section in that order. You don't have to do that, but it just kind of resonated with me a little differently doing that. I really just kind of sat down and enjoyed the ride. I don't want you to think that I'm gonna go through everything that's in this book. Feel free to grab the book. I do recommend it. I would like to think I will have the forethought to edit this and put it in the description down below. Check it out there. It's wonderful. It might even be like required reading. I say that as someone who only has it digitally and I'm converting to physical for a lot of stuff. This is something I will probably buy again physically. It's pretty good. I think I may need to revisit it multiple times and it'll slowly, like more of it will make an impact on me over time. Now let's get into the deets. So one of the things that she mentions, she does kind of go through she goes through her 10 mindsets of solo gaming, and some of it did hit with me the first time. Some of it needed a second run through. And one of the things that hit more this time was that you don't need everything. Sometimes you feel guilty, or at least I do, whenever I am playing a system and I don't use every single aspect of it. I know she has a video for Pathfinder 2nd edition, which is a hefty system. She can't use everything in Pathfinder 2nd edition. She would make no progress. She'd be, well, it's not that you can't do that. It would just be extremely time consuming, and it kind of depends on the type of game that you like to run. The type of game that I like to run is probably closer to the type of game that she likes to run, which is fast and loose. I like to be inspired by rules, not imprisoned by them. So, you don't need everything. Just let shit slide. You don't need to, the solo police are not coming for you, I promise. The next thing, don't forget the G in gaming. This is a big one because gamifying parts of it, which can maybe feel like a bit of a board game sometimes. I'm noticing there's a spectrum of solo games. Some of them are a little heavy on the gameplay loop, where maybe it's so tight that it feels like a board game, and then on the other end it feels so loose, and a lot of times this is a traditional solo game, or a lot of times this is a solo tabletop game for a group that's not necessarily meant for solo play, and you're kind of just stumbling through it, right? And sometimes it may feel like you didn't earn that victory. I really like the sweet spot that's kind of somewhere in between. I want to say that Blades in the Dark fulfills that. That's a good example because there is a gameplay loop built into it already, but also still very loosely based. So you're not something like Miru, for example, which I do love, but Miru has a pretty tight gameplay loop. Can I modify this and jump outside of the gameplay loop a little bit and try and like role play? Sure, but it would be a little weird because there's not like stats for that kind of thing. So the G in role playing, this really inspired me because it made me realize that there are a lot of things that I do that I thought was weird that she published a whole book on and people love it. So I'm like, oh my God, there's hope for me. Something similar to, like, for example, I cannibalized a lot of my board games, and I want to make another video on stuff that I've stolen. But yeah, like using the cards in Mysterium, really cool, can kind of like get the juices flowing, you know what I mean? I have used it for like 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. Could be something as simple as like this little Gloomhaven tracker for health and mana. What else we got? We got Warhammer Quest. So this is a cool game. This is an event from Warhammer Quest. A glimmer of magic shines in the air before you. A whispering voice offers you power for a price. You may suffer 1 health of damage to become empowered. I don't know if that's focusing or not. But yeah, that's neat. And that could be a whole quest right there. Here's an elf cap fungus. You may discard this after your activation to roll 1 hero die on, you know, this weird symbol on the dice, perform 1 additional action. Cool. So like elf cap fungus in your game could potentially give you like another turn, it sounds like. And then there's also like weapons and stuff. Parrying dagger, really cool. So just going through those types of things gets me real jazzed. And it gets me really excited to game in like a different way. This is from a game called Role Player, where it's kind of, oh, I just realized that there's a dragon kill on each side that's slightly different. And you can pretty much build your stats based on the race, and then you can also get like, you get a class card and a backstory card, and an alignment, and you're rolling dice and trying to like create the character. The game is literally creating a character. So like I could pretty much play this game, create a character, and then role play with that character that I just created. That's crazy. Just a few examples of things that you could do depending on what you want to do. The thing that happens next is the only thing that really matters. That is such a simple sentence, but could not be more impactful and true, because that is incredibly true. I just finished my Dragonbane solo play on camera, which was a little interesting. I never thought I'd be able to do a solo play on camera, and it was a bit much at first, but then when you realize like really all you have to figure out is what comes next. You just gotta take it piece by piece. You don't know, which is part of the excitement of it, but taking it piece by piece is really all you can do, and it keeps the excitement going. History is your friend. Isn't that the truth? A lot of journaling games use this too, where it'll make a suggestion to say, hey, based on the card that I'm giving you now, look back at some of the stuff that you put in earlier and see if they are related, and maybe that gives you a through line for the story there. Something that maybe didn't make sense before, with a little bit of history, all of a sudden it's like an epiphany. The 4 essential solo role-playing resources is something that I've probably known for a while, and maybe we all know, but I've just never seen it broken down and laid out in such a clean way that I'm like, ah, yes, of course, this makes complete sense. You have your generative resources, which, I mean, the classic example being like oracles and stuff, but I mean, similar to what I showed you earlier with these cards from Dixit and Mysterium. You could use something like this and be like, what the fuck happens next? This. what does this mean to you? This could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But yeah, that's mainly going to be your oracles. And then you also have like your suggestive stuff. So that could be anything from like tokens to dice. Let me pull something random. Like maybe you find this coin, and this coin almost looks like, is that like a Spartan Greek coin, I want to say? So then that gets the juices flowing. Like, you know, I start thinking, all right, Spartan, I think Phalanx, I think, you know, does not retreat, I think fierce warriors, and then how does that apply to your story? And you have your restrictive resources, which I pulled this from a board game too. It was just like blank dice that I think you put stickers on them. I've got more. I'm waiting for a reason to put something on the rest of these dice here. But I figured 2 as like an advantage and a disadvantage is a good way to start. Something just so simple, yes and no, right? It doesn't have to be this way. Of course, you can roll D6s, D100, whatever. Everyone does it a little bit different. Mythic has you rolling a D100 that changes based on the chaos. And then lastly, your rubric, which is the rule set, of course. So let's say you're using Dragonbane, you're using Savage Worlds, you're using D&D 5th edition. You're using a system, right? And this may have been the most powerful portion of the book for me. And there's so much more than what I'm listing here. I may even have to talk about it more. But she recommends not starting with character creation. We all do it. We all start with character creation. And I love that idea, and I love the reasoning behind why you don't do it. So I'm starting Sundered Isles next for a solo play. Where the hell's that book? Ah, yes. Sundered Isles. And Sundered Isles does a great job of following the guidance here from Geek Gamers, where instead of creating a character, it walks you through the process of creating your truths for your world. After you create your truths, then in this case, for that specific one, you're gonna start building out factions and get an idea as to like, what type of world is this? And in my case, spoiler alert for future videos, but in my case, it's actually going to be a world with airships and floating islands and a cataclysmic event that caused all of this, and magic is run amok and doing crazy things. So now, creating a character almost becomes easy after that, because now I've got all this stuff and I'm like, what is the coolest character I can make in this situation? Surely they need to be involved in the airship in a very important way. So important roles on an airship, I would think, would be like the captain, the navigator, maybe someone who tinkers with whatever the mechanics might be on the ship, and then maybe even like a mage if magic is used to help propel that ship. So that's already narrowed it down to like, if I'm gonna play a character, I'm gonna be one of those 4 things. I'm gonna be one of those 4 things. Something that happened in my first solo playthrough for Dragonbane, accidentally, I don't even remember it from this book, but it just kind of happened because of how Dragonbane is. The story became built around a trinket that you start with in Dragonbane. So he has bone dice. We later found out the bone dice became Manticore bone dice, and then how that played into the story, why he has bone dice. It was given from his father, and then it leads to this epic conclusion of one pup versus one monster based on the sins of their parents, right? So yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. You figure that was 10 episodes that all really became based on that trinket that I did not know initially. I didn't know that until like maybe 3-4 episodes in. She goes through a lot of excellent steps for, like, not just limited to what I mentioned there. You have a lot of choices. The sections regarding starting with or without a rule set, I think, really spoke to me, but for the sake of time, I think I'm really just going to condense that into really one sentence, and that is play and do what speaks to you. that may sound obvious, but it is so easy to overlook that when you are knuckle deep in solo gaming. And there's nothing wrong with that, because at the end of the day, this is your game. So have fun with it. If you've learned something, or if you were entertained at any point, maybe slap a like on this bad boy. You want to see more content like this? Maybe consider subscribing. I'll see you next time as we continue to explore the sacred art of gaming.